Community, Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee to order. First item is Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comment. Nobody has approached either the clerk or myself. So we will move on to the minutes from the August 13th meeting. They are in your packet. What are your wishes? Are there any questions, or what are your wishes? Moved by Supervisor Hart to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Supervisor Poole. Any discussion? Not. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. So we, in the room, we have Supervisor Hart and myself. Online, we have Vice Chair Marshall, Supervisor Poole, Supervisor Reynolds. Supervisor Lemmer is excused, and Chair Gibbs was hoping to join us. He's got a group health trust meeting. If he can't, he is excused. So we will move on to item 5A1, claim disallowance. Brock, which is in your packet. Mike, or?
Yes, thank you. This is a claim for some paint damage to a vehicle. After investigating it, this was not done by, the paint work was not done by county crews. It was not done by the county at all. So we therefore don't have any liability for the claim. So the recommendation is to deny the claim.
Are there any questions? And didn't they see the sign and they drove through it anyway?
I believe they saw the sign, but I don't know. And that sounds like a song. I'm not going to sing it though.
Well, just an observation. Any other questions? If not, what are the wishes of the committee relative to the claim by Brock?
Supervisor Poole has his hand raised.
Supervisor Poole?
Move to do the claim disallowance.
Right, moved by Supervisor Poole, second by Supervisor Hart. Any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. Discussion of the 2026 annual budget development and policy recommendations from the committee, including review of mandatory discretionary program documents and the discussion of rates and fees. And this will carry over into item to a degree, or be impacted by item B3 later. But Administrator Leonard.
Sure. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to give you an update, we are, as you would suspect, deep into budget development. We've met with all of the departments and on their at least initial pass-through meetings. We've had a couple follow-ups that we anticipate, and I actually had a follow-up conversation this morning with UW Extension. So well underway, have gotten a lot of the work has been done around really aligning revenue streams with expenses to try to continue to maximize and take advantage of efficiency to mitigate impacts to levy. One of the pieces of direction we got, of course, from the county board through your budget assumption and priority setting process was specific to rates and fees. So we really are working, staff are taking another pass through all of their fees to seek to make sure that those are reviewed. And as Chair Robinson referenced, one of those is before you today under item 5B3. Yesterday, we did bring some additional fees for consideration to the Public Safety Committee relative to enhanced operations at the Forensic Science Center within our medical examiner's office. In fact, medical examiner's office staff, specifically Dr. Schupner and Jess Blahnik, both testified today down in Madison at a legislative hearing relative to statutory amendments to allow us to implement some new fees that are otherwise prohibited by statute. So we're really spending a lot of time there. Credit continues to go to Sam and her team and all the department heads. They're doing a really good job, but we are, I think you would expect, and rightfully so, we are going truly line by line through the budget to look at expenditures and kind of certainly questioning certain expenditures. You'll see tomorrow on the executive committee agenda, we have a long-standing practice relative to some reimbursements for county boards specifically that are very unique, that one of which I'm asking you to reconsider through the executive committee. But that's the short update. Still have a way to go. We have a follow-up meeting with the sheriff's office. As you know, they're the largest department in terms of personnel and certainly in terms of overall budget and tax levy. So still work to do, but a lot of positive effort to this point by department heads.
I would just, I know that you've given some summaries relative to where you are with positions, and given the fact that we have both facilities and registered deeds under this committee's jurisdiction, you want to just highlight?
Sure. So one of the updates I've given to all of the standing committees is, we're going through the budget and looking for efficiency, and one of those areas is if we have vacant positions, really looking at, can we continue to operate with those vacancies? I fully anticipate in the proposed budget that I'm going to present, there's going to be no less than 15 positions that are what I'll call not funded or defunded through the budget process. And as Chair Robinson referenced, those are small departments and large. On the small department side, a lot of credit to Register of Deeds staff. They've had a vacancy for some time, and I know it's a painful request, but my terminology to this point has been shared sacrifice, because we need to make sure we balance the budget and implement the wage study. Register of Deeds, where I'm going to be not funding one of their positions and a staff of 4. Facilities and Capital Management will have a position that isn't funded. Parks, Rec and Forestry, I would miss them if I tried to go through all of them, but it's going to be a significant number throughout all of our departments.
Are there, Vice Chair Dickinson? Why don't you just grab that and move it back by you?
Thank you. The only thing I was to say is, budgeting through attrition, I think, is a fair and reasonable thought process over time. So I appreciate the administrator's thought process in that. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? And again, the schedule is the administrator is working with the department heads to finesse and refine the budget, and with Sam and her department, as well as all the department heads. That will be presented to the county board later this month, and then it will become our budget. And the committees will have opportunities in both October and November to weigh in prior to the final adoption, but we will have a relatively short turnaround between receiving, accepting the budget, and potentially any modifications for publication. That typically is done by mid-October. And then we freeze the budget until after the public hearing and ultimately before the county board takes a final vote, but we can be working on amendments during that period of time. So there is a ample opportunity to impact that budget going forward once it's been accepted and becomes our budget, and ultimately the county board is the arbitrator of all issues in that budget through the adoption of that budget. But I too would like to thank the administration, the administrator and the finance director and all the department heads for striving to come in within the constraints that have been basically imposed on us through levy limits and other limitations on revenue. Any other questions or comments? If not, we will move on to item B1, resolution authorizing the commitment of highway reserve funds to a new highway facility. Administrator Leonard or Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This resolution essentially accomplishes or is looking to accomplish two things. One, the commitment of funds, which, just for the record, can be uncommitted, so it's not something that you're held to if the board or committees decide otherwise. But the commitment of the funds cleans up the highway reserve fund in terms of categories. And we've talked a lot about fund balances and how they're spread out. And the whereas clause that explains that it doesn't impact other areas within the highway reserve fund. And, Sam could articulate this better than I, but effectively, Sam, myself, highway staff, we all met and looked at the overall highway reserve and then the, if you will, obligations to each of the categories or the ideal, coverage amounts that you'd have in there, breaks that number down to a point where the $30 million figure is one that within that highway reserve fund, you can carve out and not negatively impact any of the other areas within their fund balance that they need to have for operations, equipment, and otherwise. Similarly, because we're discussing the potential new highway facility and we're in the initial phases of planning and design, committing the funds creates a project funding source within the budget so that the work that's being done toward that end can be funded through that rather than having it be piecemealed through other areas of department budgets and then later move back in through journal entries and such. So at the end of the day, what this commitment is doing is identifying a funding source for the potential new facility and also providing a pool of funds for the work moving in that direction. And I note in the resolution as well that as each major phase of the project, if it were to continue, there are stopping points along the way where we would be coming back to the committee and the board for further authorization of any use of these funds. So it's not an authorization to spend per se.
And this came through the Infrastructure Committee, which met last Thursday. I believe it was unanimous, and Vice Chair Dickinson?
So Vice Chair of the Infrastructure Committee.
And
Yeah, it wasn't unanimous. We had discussion on it, and we had no issue with it at all. So, thank you.
So there are actually the two resolutions before us today. One is the earmarking of the reserves for the project. And the second one is basically the authorization of expenditure of reserve funds for the Phase 1 design services. So let's deal with the reserve funds for the highway facility first, item B1. Are there any questions from the committee members relative to that? Sam, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yes, just one clarification, and I do apologize for not bringing it forth before it came to you guys. The use of commitment is typically used with governmental funds. Because it is a proprietary fund, I did verify with the auditors to use something along the lines of authorized to use up to, rather than commit, only because when we talk about fund balance in a proprietary fund, it is either restricted or unrestricted. So something more appropriate would probably be like the resolution authorizing the use or the intent of unrestricted reserve funds. Again, my apologies for not bringing that prior to the meeting.
So, Mike, how do we capture that?
That's a good question. My sense is that you aren't changing the effect of the resolution from what the Infrastructure Committee approved. It's the exact same intent. It's just using the words that are suggested by our financial team. So it seems to me to be in the area of a scrivener's error type correction. I think if this committee passed the resolution with that adjusted language, then as long as that's made clear at the county board level that that's the resolution we're voting on, then I think you're in good shape. Does that
So
make sense?
where are we? Are we amending the whereases in there now?
I think it would just be in the now therefore be it resolved, the first one where it says commit.
All right, so in changing the word to,
Yes, and the title probably too.
I would recommend either using approving or approving the intent to utilize unrestricted reserves.
If I may, Mr. Chair. Just to, I think one of the most important things that that staff have, that we've talked about, and I know that my sense is that the infrastructure committee understood is, again, that as Chris referenced, this is not a resolution that allows any spending without further authorization from the board. So my suggestion, for what it's worth, would be to change the language to indicate that we resolve to demonstrate the intent to authorize up to $30 million of highway reserve funds to the project. That way, just if anyone has any concern that this resolution in and of itself does not authorize the actual spending, but rather it's, as Chris said, it's the intent to then capture within the financial statements, specifically the fund balances, to demonstrate that there is that intent to use that funds, at least at this time, in the future for that project.
so let me, I'm a little concerned if we're going to kick something out without having the language before us. And we have another meeting on the 18th before the county board would take it up, so.
If I may, yeah, the infrastructure committee will have a meeting before the county educational meeting on September 18th for some other issues. So if there is the requirement, or the need for the infrastructure to do that, bring it back to us, and I think that could happen.
And we are meeting that day as well. So perhaps in light of the discussion and the desire to get the language right, can we postpone action on this and direct the Corp Council to make the necessary changes and bring it back to both committees on the 18th for county board action on the 18th?
You can do that.
Is there an objection to that approach? If not, we will do that. Could we then, we could take action, though, on the second resolution at this time. Mike is nodding yes. So we'll postpone the action, ask that it be put on both agendas on the 18th, and then take the modified version in. And Mike, my hope would be, as that becomes available, if you could insert both resolutions in the packet, and then, in light of the fact that the second one hasn't been approved, but then we can deal with it at the county board level. Is that acceptable, Vice Chair Dickinson?
Yes.
Okay,
I think
If we
I
could-
follow, yes.
all right. All right, so we will move on then to item 5B2, resolution authorizing the expenditure of highway reserves funds for Phase 1 design services for a new highway facility. Anything you'd like to add on this, Chris?
The only thing I noticed is that I used the word commitment twice in the resolution, so we may want to treat this one the same way as the previous resolution. But I can speak to what we're seeking to do with it on the 18th, if you would like.
Could this be as easy as deleting the word commitment?
I'll defer to the finance director in terms of, and the Corp Council, since it's in the whereas clause in the fiscal note.
I'm of two minds on this, as a lawyer often is. It's not in the now therefore be it resolved clause, so the board's action is not actually committing anything, but it is in the fiscal note and it is in one of the whereas clauses. If we're already changing one, it seems to make sense to adjust this one as well, just for clarity's sake, even if, you know, legally it's not an issue, just take that out of the equation. That's just my thought.
Right, I would make a similar request relative to this resolution for the Corporation Council to review the language in the third whereas in the well, it's actually the fiscal note. The fiscal note, and then we'll bring that back also on the 18th and to both committees similarly. So if we could, is there an objection to that approach? And then we'll get them consistent and before us, so. And so we'll bring that back. Chris, do you want to quick highlight the justification for this?
Sure. The intent of this resolution, when it's ultimately considered, is to authorize spending to cover the design costs for the schematic design phase of the potential highway facility project. The schematic design is what's needed for the site plan approval, and staff did conduct an RFP. There was a winning proposal, and the amount was pretty low considering the scope of the project at $29,500. The resolution is seeking $75,000 or up to that amount because the county will incur additional costs outside of the architect's work, such as soil boring, asbestos testing, and the like. So this resolution, if it were to pass, would authorize the use of up to $75,000 to pay for the schematic design phase, which gets you towards site plan approval, and then also to cover the costs that the county would have. Additionally, there's a RFP out now for the construction manager at risk, and this is just a note to say that in addition to the design firm, bringing the construction manager on at a similarly low amount allows you to get a much narrower focus and clearer sense of cost estimations for the project, which up to now have been exceedingly high level. So you get more of the real world sense of pricing, any supply issues, any materials issues from the CM, from the construction manager as they're working on this day to day, and that will help to inform the high level or not as high level cost estimations, so that when if we were to come back for the design document phase, then we would have sort of an iterative process which gets you closer and closer to understanding what the overall project would cost, and then also help to inform the funding strategy conversation at the committee level and with Administrator Leonard in terms of if it were to be more than $30 million, what would that gap be?
Are there any questions of Deputy Administrator Holman? If not, we'll bring those issues, bundle them and bring them back on the 18th. All right. Item B3, amend section 3.30 of the Marathon County General Code to increase dog license tax. Who'd like to take the lead on that?
I'll gladly be the lucky one to do that. So this has been a topic of discussion for the last 4 or 5 years, probably. And the fact is that the county has not increased our dog license fees since 2001. So we have been operating on the same level of fees for 24 years. A couple years ago, the Humane Society came to us and said that if they were going to continue to provide the services that are outlined in the statutes, that they were going to insist on a contract of $100,000 per year. So for the last couple of years, the funds that the county has collected from the municipalities from dog license fees have been around $30,000 to $35,000, leaving a very large gap between what we collect and what we are obligated to pay to the Humane Society. So it's been a conversation over the last couple of years. Okay, how can we resolve this situation? What can we do? And we're really left with the only option being to raise the fees that we collect from the municipalities. So that is, a lot of counties are in a similar situation, and dogs are always one of those things that seems to be a thorn in the side of every county clerk. This is often a topic of conversation at our meetings. So I borrowed a little bit from Portage County and copied what they did as far as raising our fees. This still does not get us to $100,000 a year. Of course, we never know exactly how much we're going to get in dog license fees because we don't know how faithfully people are going to license their dogs, how well they're going to keep up with that. So this gets us much closer and gets rid of that huge deficit that we have. So that's what is in the packet, and that is what we've proposed to do, starting with the 2026 dog licensing year.
All right, it's pretty self-explanatory. I think for some of us that have been on the board for a long period of time, we had a lot of controversy in the 2008, 10-ish era where there was a lot of discussion about the dog licenses, and quite honestly, a lot of the issues relative to the Humane Society and the demands are associated with cats, but we don't have cat licenses. So we have to look at the tools that are available to us relative to support for those Humane Society or animal control purposes, and that's through this license. And as uncomfortable as it may be, I think there's probably a need to take a look at adjusting our fees to deal with inflation in our cost associated with that program. So are there any questions from the members of the committee? Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to highlight within the resolution, and a lot of credit to Kim, Chris, and Mike, and others that we've all been part of the conversations, but
David in my office has done a huge amount of
yeah.
work on this.
one of the things, excuse me, just to highlight within the proposed ordinance amendment is the idea that we attempt to get around, or I shouldn't say get around, we address what has been kind of a recurring challenge, which is, as Kim alluded to, we haven't raised the fee for this since 2000, original resolution is 2001. That the approach taken or the approach referenced within the ordinance amendment is to have that indexed to the CPI so that it would go up. And as Kim said, it really is a collection of these fees is in partnership with the municipalities. They are really the ones that then would be in the driver's seat with their respective residents, but try to get us to a place where, as was brought up with respect to the budget, in light of our limited revenue streams, how do we stay on top of these fees that are mandated, or not the fees that are mandated, the services that are mandated, but how do we make sure that we stay on top of the fees that we're charging and that we don't essentially fall behind and begin to further subsidize those services with levy that, at least under our current system, just doesn't grow at the same pace.
So Administrator Leonard, I'm not seeing the language for the CPI adjustment in.
It's in the middle of, if you're on page 64 of the packet, you may be looking at page 65, which is actually the resolution from 2001. But in the middle, it talks about the dog license tax will increase each year by an amount that is up to the inflation rate using the CPI index or otherwise
Okay,
directed by the
I
board.
see.
So I would envision this being very similar to what we have implemented over the last 2 years with the budget, but specifically last year, very transparently, is to have a fee schedule where this would be expressly stated within that fee schedule, proposed and considered by the board as part of the budget. We would have to, of course, amend. Would we, Mike, have to amend the ordinance, or is it sufficiently explanatory with the tying it to CPI and having it in the fee schedule?
It seems self, effectuating with your current language.
Thank you.
So, but the board, through the adoption of the budget, then would fulfill that requirement?
That's how I see it, yes.
So we're all on the same page. So are there any questions relative to this proposed language? And I didn't catch that, so thank you for pointing that out. Any questions? If not, what are the wishes of the committee?
I have a question, Chair Robinson.
Go ahead, Vice Chair.
What would the anticipated revenue be if the same number of people license their dogs next year as they did this year?
We are just a little more than doubling the fees. So we would anticipate if the same number of people license their dogs, we'd take in about $75,000, which still leaves us a little bit short, but not nearly as drastically so.
Thank you.
20, okay. One of them is doubling.
I make a motion to approve if there's no further questions.
All right, we have a motion by Vice Chair Marshall. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Hart. Any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor of adoption of the motion modifying section 3.30 of the Marathon County General Code to increase dog license tax will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right. B4, reimbursement resolution for solid waste in connection with the Clean Water Fund application. Is this Administrator Leonard or Dave?
Well, I'll let Dave take all the hard questions. This is really a formality with respect to, if you think to some of the other times that the county has gone out for bonding, a reimbursement resolution is a pretty standard practice. It allows the municipal entity to essentially reimburse itself for costs associated with the project for which the borrowing is being conducted, even if those project costs were incurred prior to the actual bond being issued. So we not only have that with the Clean Water Fund program that's been considered or discussed, I should say, at the Solid Waste Management Board, but also at the county board. But in addition to that, this is a prerequisite for us to submit the application for principal for forgiveness through the Clean Water Funding Program. So it does not, similar to what Chris referenced before with the highway funds and the demonstration of intent to use the funds, this similarly doesn't mean the project is going to happen. It allows us to be able to submit the application that would then be considered for potential award and principal forgiveness. So that's the simple explanation, and Dave can correct anything that I misstated and answer any specific questions.
You summed it up very well, and just want to reiterate that we can still submit the application, but if we don't have this resolution, then we have no chance of the principal forgiveness funding, which is upwards of $3.5 million. So I would think that that's an important aspect of this application, and one of the big reasons why we're attempting to go after this. So any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions? If not, what are your wishes? Supervisor Hart.
I will move to approve the resolution and move it to the full county board for consideration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Supervisor Poole. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of adoption of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We will now go on to item B5, consideration of offer to purchase county-owned property at 281 Grand Avenue in the city of Schofield. Administrator Leonard? There's
Sure,
A lot of background on this, and
There's a
I
lot
think
of.
we'll cover the process as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of material in your packet beginning on page 69, but again, just to ground everyone on this committee, and I know you're aware of this, the property at 281 Grand Avenue in the city of Schofield was the subject of kind of two concurrent processes that the county was moving through. The first was a human health hazard action that was going through court, and at the same time, the owners of the property were quite delinquent relative to property taxes. Ultimately, the county was able to proceed via the tax deed process and actually took ownership of the parcel based on those back taxes. Pursuant to your ordinance, one of the first things that happens when that occurs is that the municipality in which the property is located is made aware of their ability to purchase that property following the fact that the county has taken it. Similarly, what the county does is immediately we go out and we secure an appraisal. Again, to kind of reiterate why that is, not only is it set forth in your ordinance, but it's also a practice that I think is well-informed from a legal perspective, a risk mitigation perspective, to ensure that we have some idea as to the fair market value of that property, so as to ensure that any amount above and beyond the fair market value of the property for which we sell the property would then be remitted to the previous owner, as is required under the U.S. Constitution, as recently interpreted through the Tyler v. Hennepin County case. So you have an appraisal in your packet, again, beginning on page 69. That appraisal walks through the process by which the appraiser came to their valuation. You also then have an offer to purchase, which we received from the city of Schofield. So the next step for this committee is essentially to, as the chair referenced, evaluate that offer to purchase in light of the other information in the packet and make a determination of whether or not the county wishes to accept that offer, decline that offer, or something in between those. I would just say with respect to this parcel, and this goes not only to the tax foreclosure process or the tax deed process, but also the human health hazard case that was pending. We did a lot of work to remediate that property and clean it up. And that's referenced within the appraisal. So staff have had a number of meetings, one earlier this week to talk about how do we ensure that we are documenting those costs and then are in a good position to recoup those. So I just wanted to say that so you're aware of that process and that we continue to do that. Credit to a lot of departments have had their hands in this, but special thanks to Mike for giving some thought on the legal side. How do we go through the right legal process to make sure we can recoup those cleanup costs, both under the human health hazard case, but also kind of in the framework of the tax deed process. But the offer to purchase is in your packet. The offer from the city of Schofield at a high level relative to what the terms. It's a purchase price of $550,000. There's an addendum laying out some additional contingencies, most notably from my perspective, a site survey, environmental assessment. But the appraisal itself, that credit to Kim on this, she made the arrangements with our appraiser to have that completed. The appraised value based on those calculations was $400,000. Anything, Mike, anything you want to add in terms of additional information?
Not unless there are questions.
And again, if you could just go through why is the city of Schofield at the table at this time versus going through surplus property? If you can go through that.
I can do that, sure. So our ordinance, which is consistent with state law, upon acquisition of tax delinquent property by the county, the first thing that our county clerk is tasked with doing is notifying the municipality in which the parcel is located of our acquisition of that parcel. if that municipality then reaches out and expresses an intent to purchase that parcel, our ordinance calls for us to not go through the Wisconsin surplus process of that type of bidding, and instead permits the municipality to reach an agreement for sale with us, assuming that we get at least, we collect at least fair market value for the parcel and sufficient funds to pay our back taxes and the amounts of money that we have in the property. So those are the requirements for the sale to the municipality. The sale to the municipality then it's not required to be competitively bid through a surplus auction site, as long as we can get that fair market value pricing. So that's the process that was followed here, consistent with our ordinance. The city expressed their interest following our required notice to them. They subsequently adopted a resolution extending the offer that's in your packet, and it's before you today.
And I'd just like to point out too, that from the perspective of the approach to this property relating to the human health issues, the city of Schofield had requested the county's involvement and engagement, and there were court filings and proceedings addressing that issue. So the city of Schofield has been an active partner or party to this process throughout in an effort to deal with the human health hazards, and now at the point of time where there's a potential for the future use of the site. So Chair Gibbs has joined the group. So are there any questions? So again, we haven't taken this through surplus property, but we are consistent with our own internal policies and Chapter 75 of the Wisconsin statutes relative to the disposition. And we're trying to work with a local unit of government in which the property is located. And they did also do an appraisal.
They did.
Yes.
They did their own appraisal, and that appraisal came back with a fair market value of $395,000. You'll see as you look through the appraisal documents, and it's the appraisal document, I should say, in your packet, a substantial amount of the, or I should say, a portion of the property value, there's a deduction within that evaluation done by the appraisal entity in light of some additional remediation work that the county did not undertake because it didn't directly go to the human health hazard case that we had, and it wasn't absolutely required for us to sell the property. So there's a deduction within that appraised value document to essentially allow the city to further remove items from the property, and most notably, I think that's some concrete pads and things of the like. But again, the offer is $550,000. That's on page 115 of your packet. There is that also short addendum as well. My only thing I would say is, and Mike can elaborate perhaps, sorry to put you on the spot, but from a risk mitigation standpoint, I think certainly the offer is sufficiently above the fair market value assessment that came from the appraiser that, if I assumed or anticipated that one of the questions you might have is what legal risk does the county have accepting this and not going to surplus auction or somehow selling the property in some other way. The offer is significantly above both of those appraised valuations that was done. So I would say that's a positive in the risk mitigation department.
So Mike and I had a conversation last week relative to the language in addendum A as it relates to the confidentiality and the legal protection relative to the environmental site assessment. Have you had a chance to talk to the council?
I have not been able to connect with council for the city, so I don't have a good answer for you on that yet.
So under Chapter 75 and other statutes under the spills law, there is a liability protection for municipalities that acquire property through a number of ways, including tax foreclosure or at the NREM process. So the county, by taking title, cannot be compelled to clean up that site. That is transferable to other governmental units upon transfer, such as the city of Schofield. They have asked for language in there that allows them to do the environmental site assessment, and consistent with practices in the private sector, they want to keep that information confidential and have it exchanged through the councils, I think, but in light of transparency with governments, my preference would be to have that information public, and for a couple of reasons. One, should the sale fall through for that purpose, I think we would want to try to identify those costs going forward. We can either sell the property as is or potentially address some of those issues prior to the sale and potentially recover those out of the proceeds. And I just think it would be in the best interest of transparency for us to share that information going forward. But that's my personal opinion based upon my previous experience with dealing with these issues. And I don't know, Mike, what your thoughts are. We could perhaps leave the language in there for now and then try to resolve that issue between now and the board.
Sure, I mean, I don't know that this is anything more than a standard template that was added to the offer. So I don't know that it has significant value to the city, but I haven't had that conversation, so I don't want to misrepresent that either. If the committee is comfortable with moving it forward with the understanding that we'll get some additional clarity on that paragraph and bring that to the county board, I'm happy to do that.
And I would be comfortable with that approach. Are there any questions? Are there any questions?
Vice Chair Marshall here.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I didn't see anything in the appraisal regarding the fact that it is waterfront property, which we know is scarce, and just wondering if that was considered.
Clerk Trueblood, if you'd like to.
I had several rather lengthy conversations with Gordy Meyer, who's our appraiser. He said this was perhaps one of the most challenging appraisals that he's ever done, just because of the unique property, the condition of the property, and all the unknowns, I guess. And he spent quite a bit of time working with, I think he had some conversations with Chris, and I believe he also had some conversations with City of Schofield. He talked to several people before, as he was doing the appraisal. I don't recall him ever mentioning anything about it being waterfront property, but he said there were so many different factors to take into account with putting a number on the property, and he felt that that was, in his professional opinion, the best he could do on it.
If I can add one thing, I did not have conversations with the appraiser, but within the packet, I think to your threshold concern, if I understand it correctly, Vice Chair Marshall, whether or not the appraiser knew it was waterfront, I certainly think that's the case. There are pictures that the appraiser took of the property that are in the packet itself within the appraisal document, and they do capture the waterfront nature of the property. Similarly, I know the appraiser that was retained by the City of Schofield made arrangements with county staff to go to the site and tour the site in connection with that appraisal. So I think certainly from a knowledge standpoint, that each appraiser was well aware of the waterfront nature of the property, to the extent that the nature of that waterfront impacted the valuation. I, of course, don't have those letters behind my name relative to appraising property, but I have no doubt that awareness was there. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
The package specifically references the flowage and flowage views on 94 and 95 of the packet. So I would assume that those were factored in. And it's also, I think there are 3 or 4 pictures where there's water, 5 pictures where there's water showing. Any other questions? If not,
I
what,
have a question.
go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, just for clarification, so the appraisal was at 400,000. The offer from the city of Schofield is at 100 or 550,000. That's 150,000 difference. And my understanding is the county cannot make money on these deals. So would that 150,000 then go to the former property owner, or what am I missing?
Mike?
Yes, you are correct, and I'll explain how we get to the amount that goes back to the former property owner. So first of all, we take out of the sale price the amount of delinquent taxes, penalties, and interest that were owed to the county. We also take out of that sum the costs that the county incurred, including the cost to clean up the property and the cost to ready the property for sale. And then the remainder is required constitutionally and statutorily to go to the former owner, which is the process that we would intend to follow.
And then a follow-up to that is, if we're paying over by 150,000, wouldn't it be wise to keep maybe money in the county to ask the city of Schofield to redo their offer, maybe closer to the $400,000 level? If that's legal.
My sense would be, since we have an offer and it's at $550,000, if we attempted to go lower than that, the property owner would have a colorable claim that we did not conduct the sale at fair market value and would have a takings claim against the county. So I would caution against that route.
Understood.
Any other? Cody?
Thank you. And for the sake of discussion, can we get a disclosure on how much that cost incurred was? I think it was 250 that we took from contingency to do the cleanup, and then what was the tax delinquency? So,
Sure. Mike can probably find that very quickly. My recollection is that the cleanup costs were about $175,000. The delinquent taxes were in the neighborhood about $142,000. And then there are some miscellaneous costs, in those numbers as well. The other piece that, again, we're going to make sure, Mike, we've had some really good conversations on the legal front about how do we best ensure that not only do we protect those costs, but any other funds that are owed to the county, that we have a process to mitigate our recovery risk there. But I think Mike probably has the information. I've sufficiently talked long enough.
Thank you for the professional stalling, Mr. Administrator. The total taxes, interest, and penalties owed are $145,039.41. And then the total post-acquisition costs, which include the cost to abate the human health hazards, cleanup costs, personnel time associated with getting the property ready for sale, some utility costs, and the appraisal costs is $179,068.78. So the total, adding those two together, is $324,108.19.
Those are tentative numbers. right now, and we'll find,
They're,
at the time of the transfer, we would finalize those numbers.
right, we'll finalize them. I would say they're fairly firm tentative numbers.
But for the purposes of, hypothetically, if the sale were not to go through or contingent upon environmental issues to be addressed, those would be added on to those and subtracted from the net proceeds.
If the county were to incur any additional costs associated with the sale, then I think those costs could be assessed. So taking into account what you're discussing and other hypothetical things that we're not thinking of. So yes, in that sense, these are tentative numbers.
All right, any other questions? Any other questions? If not, what are the wishes? What are the wishes of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead, Chair Gibbs.
I make a motion that we approve the sale conditioned on verification of the environmental cleanup issues in the contract.
Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Hart. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. I want to thank staff, and we've had a lot of staff involved in this process, which is not yet complete, but is an iterative process, but thank you for getting it to this point. All right, item B6, disposition of excess right-of-way, County Trunk P, Town of Eau Plaine. I don't know, Chris, if you're going to lead this, did Kevin join us? Chris, Lance, or Kevin?
And if Kevin's not accessible, I can do my best.
Or Mike.
I did join in, but Mike is also up to speed on
Mike,
this
it's
one.
your last, well, no, it's not your last.
I have one more, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Yeah, so I think this is similar to an item that this committee considered a few months back, but different. At that time, we thought this portion was larger than it turned out before we got to the county board, that a portion of what we thought the county owned actually had already been conveyed to this church. But then we found out that there still was a sliver that is still owned by the county. If you go to page 132 in your packet, there's a little red rectangle that shows where this sliver actually is, and you'll see there's a part of a building on it, which makes things complicated as well. But this item was before the infrastructure committee as well, and the recommendation is, or was from that committee, to dispose of the excess right-of-way and transfer that 0.2 acres to this church who already has built on said parcel. So that's where we are. I would note, there are a couple of Scrivener's errors in the resolution, specifically a couple of misspellings that we have corrected for the county board packet, but nothing that changes any of the intent of what infrastructure did or anything that I just said.
All right, any other, or any questions or discussion? Long time in coming? Must be government. All right, well, what are the wishes of the committee? Supervisor Hart.
Thank you. I will make a motion to approve the resolution for disposition of excess right-of-way for the property with the Scrivener's errors corrected.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Supervisor Poole. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of approval of the disposition of excess right-of-way on County Trunk Highway P in the town of Eau Plaine will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. All right, we will run or go to educational presentations. Item A is the Treasurer's Department update. Connie?
Hello, everybody. Just wanted to let everyone know that the County Treasurer's Office has been very busy the last couple months, June through August. We've collected all the second installments, and I just want to do an appreciation for my staff. They did an excellent job. Erica and Michelle are wonderful employees, and they were especially thankful and helpful to all our residents that came in and paid and all phone calls. So I just want to do a great shout out to my team. They did an excellent job. We are currently working with CPZ. We're finishing the assessment questions and invoicing a conversion charges. We are continuing to receive tax delinquent parcels. So we are receiving multiple ones that are in the in-rem and tax deed process. So I'm assuming by October 7th, when the in-rem are due, we will get another lump sum of tax collections. So with that being said, we collected from 2013 to 2023 tax years, $598,545. The current year that we've collected in these 3 months is $24,790,000. The interest and penalty we've collected is $520,000. And our tax deed fees was $7,125, and that was in these 3 months. And we've also paid out the August settlements to the school districts, which totaled $26,076,611, and the municipalities was $14,808,756. So all the municipalities and school districts are paid in full. And now we're just doing the delinquencies and continuing with the tax deed and in-rem process with administration. And my staff is also in the process of doing the lottery credits now that we are in charge of them. The Department of Revenue is now done as of October 1st. So now we're either removing them or adding them to the tax bills. And in the next couple months, we'll be very busy with working with training municipalities, the clerks and the treasurers on what we need for preparing the tax bills. And we will also be working with having them complete their levy resolutions and doing their budgets. So, and in November is the main part where we're going to be starting the full tax bill process of entering the tax rates. So my office will be very busy in the next couple of months, all the way through until March.
Thank you for that update. Are there any questions for the treasurer? Connie, could you share those numbers with us and maybe an email? I think they're impressive numbers.
Yep, I can send them. What we've collected in from June to August. Yep, I'll send those over to you.
That'd be great. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, we'll move.
Chair Marshall here.
Go ahead.
When would the next batch of in-rem properties be researched and letters sent, and when would that batch start?
I can take that one, Connie. We'll actually, Vice Chair Marshall, we're going to be giving an update at your next meeting next week on the properties that are currently in process, and I can add something to that update, or I should say my very talented staff can add stuff to that update on what we anticipate moving forward. But that'll be at your next meeting. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but as Connie referenced, October 7th is an important date when we will have a court hearing. I hope nobody shows up. I hope they all pay before then, but we can give you more of an update at your next meeting.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you again, Connie. We'll move on then to 2B, Health Benefit Broker Update, including request for compensation disclosure. Administrator Leonard?
Candace is actually going to take that. There was a specific question about our health benefit broker and specifically how do they get paid?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had the opportunity to do some research in response to the question about following the fiduciary responsibilities for health insurance plans under the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. The good news is that we are a governmental entity, which means that under ERISA, which is kind of the co-piece of this, we are not held to those standards. We are a non-ERISA bound employer because we are a governmental entity. But that being said, I did reach out to USI and I asked them to confirm any and all contracts that were within the scope of our contract with them where they could potentially make any commissions or any other revenues. And I'm pleased to say that they have none. We pay our contract price and that is all. And one of the reasons that that occurs is because we continually use the RFP process. We use the RFP process to determine which contractor we use for these services. We are on the cusp of going out for RFP again because it has been a number of years. And any ancillary services that they may or may not recommend or that we feel we may need, we also go out for RFP for those to ensure that is a transparent process and that we are not just going on the advice of a specific broker that could somehow benefit from that interaction. So that is the update that I have for you. Any questions on that?
Supervisor Marshall or Vice Chair Marshall, I know that this is an interest to you. Do you have any questions?
My question is, I appreciate that we go out for RFP for our broker services. Do we just instruct our broker to bid our healthcare to multiple health agencies so that we get multiple bids through the broker? Otherwise, essentially what we're buying is about worth close to $10 million in health insurance. Is that correct?
We have an RFP process for health insurance as well. That is what our broker does for us. And that is why we are about to go out to bid again. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lance?
Sure, I want to make sure I understand the question. So when we do go out to the market, I think as Candace said, the important thing is, how do we insulate risk against the idea that a broker is essentially shopping us things that they would get commission on, is we specifically put out the RFPs that whether it's for actual broker services or if it's some ancillary product like FMLA management, we put out those RFPs similarly to what we did with the on-site clinic that we discussed with this committee, as opposed to the broker only releasing those, because that, again, guards against essentially the broker drafting an RFP that might otherwise steer certain potential responders away or be tailored to only be amenable to certain responders. So when we go out to bid for, if we were going to look at moving self-funded, for example, and saying, who do we want as a third-party administrator, we would go through that process, and my anticipation would be we would release that RFP similar to what we've done in the past for other ancillary products. I hope that answers the question.
I guess my question is, are we getting multiple bids for our health insurance for 2026?
No, we didn't go out for we didn't go out for bid for health insurance in 2026.
If we're buying a significant value of health insurance, does that not violate our procurement policy that said we will go to multiple bids for anything over $25,000 for goods or services?
Short answer, no. The procurement policy allows for multi-year contracts, which essentially is what this is. And Mike, feel free to jump in if you opine differently, but we have a renewal provision that, again, just like any entity, when you get your renewal rate, we certainly have negotiations, and we've been in negotiations to try to continue to bring that renewal rate down for 2026. But there's not a problem from, at least from my perspective, relative to procurement. We're operating in a way that I think Marathon County has consistently over certainly my tenure, but also before, and I think consistent also with other municipal entities in the state. Mike, anything you want to add on that?
Just on the procurement question, our procurement code requires us to go out for RFP when the number is over 80,000, but we are permitted in that RFP to seek multi-year agreements, arrangements with responding entities, and that's my understanding of the health insurance arrangement, is that our current provider is the provider that was the selected responder in the last RFP process. The next time we go out to RFP, we would again be soliciting either a single year or a multi-year response.
Are there any other questions? If not, thank you for that update. Update on county-owned properties, preparing for potential divestment. Administrator Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one of the things that this committee has certainly discussed over the last quite a number of years, actually, is really looking at what properties, in light of all of the facility work we've done, are available for divestment. And I'll start with the dormitory. That was a piece of property you recently provided some feedback along with the Extension Education Economic Development Committee to go back and put together an RFP. We have an RFP template that I want to share with you at your next meeting that does capture what I believe to be the criteria and assessment criteria that you laid out. It really gets at the value that trying to assess how do we measure value of any RFP proposal. So some of the things currently in there are purchase price or long-term lease value, number of jobs created, workforce housing units created, sales tax generation. So I'll present that at your next meeting, but just wanted to give, the chair asked for an update on some of the things that potentially might get in the way of divestment. And one of those things has been the need to relocate the credit union from the Thomas Street building. Very happy to report to all of you, if you haven't seen the news on that front, the credit union was able to close on a future property, on a property that they're going to use for their future site. I don't have details as to the construction timeline because there's some work that needs to be done there. But their announcement that they put out publicly indicated that they would, of course, be moving there in 2026. So my hope is really before the end of the year that I can bring you requests for proposals for feedback on all of the River Drive parcels, the Thomas Street location, as well as the dormitory. However, if you checked your email earlier today, I did send an email consistent with the announcement that UW Stevens Point released with North Central Technical College earlier today. They announced that they were going to enhance their partnership, and as part of that partnership and advancement, or enhancement, I should say, the UW Stevens Point Wausau campus would be relocating from its current location to the North Central Technical College campus. So again, seeking some guidance ultimately from this committee on how to approach divestment, and does it make sense from a planning perspective to move forward with the dormitory kind of as a standalone or as part of the overall campus property. I had the opportunity to speak with Committee Chair Robinson as well as Extension Education Economic Development Committee Chair Marash earlier today following that announcement. I think their desire is to hold a joint meeting to provide some of that feedback and hold that joint meeting relatively quickly. But I think we have a strong template for RFPs for property development or property divestment. So I want to thank Chris and his team for the work they did, but also Aaron Andrews, who's been doing some of our economic development work and putting together those templates. But certainly a lot of headway has been made, and certainly the announcement this morning will bring some significant opportunities for the county and for the board to consider what the long-term use of those properties, the campus property will be. But again, my goal, I'll put in your packet for your next meeting the actual RFP template, so you can see how we have structured it with the evaluation criteria, so you can provide any feedback you might have. But the good news, we should be able to release an RFP for River Drive development and Thomas Street location redevelopment or divestment very, very soon, if the template is consistent with what you're looking for.
And again, based upon the announcement this morning, I think there is a need for the county to have discussions about what can we do, and then perhaps what should we do relative to the future of the UWMC campus. My editorial comment. So any questions relative to those processes? So again, we'll have that template at our next meeting next week for your review, but we wanted to provide an update on those to you today. Okay, any other announcements or agenda items for future meeting dates? I think through the budget, we are pretty full with our agendas. Are there any things that the committee members would like to see us focus in on in the short term? Again, we will have at least 2 more meetings this month. We will have the meeting on the 18th, and we're still looking to the joint meeting with the Portage County on the airport budget for the 29th. Do we know, have we confirmed that?
It's believed to be that day, but I'll email Dave just to verify that Portage did confirm.
So we would look for that annual meeting where we review and discuss the budget, and I think we'd like to also have a discussion potentially about long-term financial issues at the airport as part of that. Any other items? If not, our next meeting is next Thursday, and that takes us to item 8. The infamous adjournment. Who would like to make that motion? Supervisor Hart, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Poole. All those in favor of adjournment will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you all.